Welcome to the Impulse Spotlight, a podcast for product development professionals. In this episode, we meet with the Vice President of Product Development at MillerKnoll, a company that specializes in workplace furniture. Our guest is an avid game player, spending his free time honing his skills in activities like volleyball, tennis, cornhole, and darts. He also enjoys spending time with his wife and 2 daughters. Larry Kallio was born and raised in Lansing, Michigan. He went on to study math and statistics at Grand Valley State University, initially aspiring to be a high school math teacher and swimming coach. After college, Larry's career took a different turn, landing a part-time job at Steelcase, which soon evolved into a full-time role in office furniture custom development. In 1999, after 5 years at Steelcase, Larry joined Herman Miller, now MillerKnoll, as a development engineer. Over the last 24 years, he's made a significant contribution to the company, leading product development and customization efforts. Today, we'll be diving into some of Larry's most notable work, specifically the development of the renewed height adjust table. We'll explore the development process from the initial timeline and team involvement to the key milestones and the prototyping process. Larry shares his insights into the use of die-cast parts for testing and challenges faced with making world-class furniture. Additionally, he'll offer valuable advice to those looking to make a significant impact in the product development industry. Join us as we learn from Larry's wealth of experience and gain a deeper understanding of the art and science of product development. Let's get into it. Hey, Larry, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. So I started Impulse a little over 25 years ago, worked for a product development company. Before that, I tell everybody I got my master's degree doing that. And then started Impulse and have been designing products for companies since. How did you get into product development?
I'd say the back door. For the most part, I really started my college career in the 90s, mid-90s, thinking I was going to be a math teacher and a swim coach. And I kind of got towards the tail end of that. I had a buddy that worked at Steelcase, which is another office furniture manufacturer here in West Michigan. Offered me kind of a part-time job to come hang out with them to finish out my last semester. And I'm like, this seems kind of fun. So I'll just, I can always go back and get certified to teach. So I'm going to try this for a while and see what happens. So just took my math degree with an emphasis in statistics. And then started doing custom solutions work for divisions of Steelcase that I was then able to turn into being a new product development mechanical engineer here at Herman Miller back in the day. And my journey, which maybe we'll talk about a bit more later, is brought me here to help lead product development efforts. And it's been 24 years now at MillerKnoll.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a fun story. I'm interested to hear a little more about that. So what is your current role and what kinds of products do you develop?
Yeah, so here MillerKnoll is actually the bringing together of Herman Miller and Knoll. So 2 very close competitors within the contract furniture industry, and also both have a good presence within the retail market for contemporary home furnishings. So it made sense to bring the 2 companies together. I remember being on a call with our CEO, and she was kind of coy when she said during the pandemic, never really let a crisis pass you by, right? I'm like, you mean something, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
So I woke up one day and all of a sudden Herman Miller had bought its closest competitor, Knoll, and we're bringing these 2 companies together ever since. So right now we kind of break up our product development effort into 3 different categories. One of them is called lifestyle, which does more the home furnishings, lobby-like furniture, the couches, the coffee tables, some folks might call it ancillary furniture. We have a seating category, which does a lot of our high-performance task seating. So if you think of, Herman Miller used to be known as the Air-on Chair company. So so our high-end task seating is where we spend a lot of our investment dollars from research and so on and so forth. So that's an isolated team. And then I get to help with everything else. So I lead the workplace product development category. And then in that, I also have the team around the world that does the customizations of that for our clients too. A big part of the contract furniture industry is not only, looking at a catalog and buying items, but then saying, well, I want it to do this. Can you make it do that? So about 20% of our overall market is custom.
Okay. So when you say, is it contract manufacturing, or what was the phrase? Contract
furniture.
Contract furniture.
Yeah.
Does that mean custom?
It means commercial, probably, right? Okay. So if you think of retail versus commercial, right?
Yeah.
In our contract market, we set up contracts with commercial companies to sell them the sea of desks they're going to need for all their folks in their facility, and their conference rooms and their boardrooms, and then residential being more the couches and the coffee tables I mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about the product that you want to talk about today.
The Renew table is really kind of what I want to talk about today. It was we really started development of it back in 2012. And it was really when I was starting to come of age as a product development lead versus a product development engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd kind of dabbled a little bit in leading a few smaller product development initiatives, had one good table product development under my belt with the Everywhere table, and was ready to, from a overall project leadership and category leadership, kind of tackle the next thing. And the next thing was the Renew height adjustable table. So for Herman Miller back then, it was really our first true broad standard line getting into the height adjustable table market.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about it. Like, what are some of the key features or maybe things we wouldn't know about it just by looking at it online or even in person?
If you go on the website and you look at the Renew table, you'd look at it and be like, oh yeah, it's a good looking height adjustable table. I've seen a million of them.
Yeah.
And it's not, I kind of always said, if you had everybody line up their tables and put someone on a skateboard going at however many meters per second, they'd all pretty much feel the same. You got to get under the carriage and you got to know the nuts and bolts of it to know what the differences are. But,
sure.
What we did with Renew is we did things in the industry that we hadn't been done at the time, right? For the most part, our industry was relying on smaller manufacturers, a lot of them from Germany and Denmark, for the most part, to sell us a full table base, steel feet, steel legs that go up and down, steel undercarriage. We buy it, we put a top on it, we call it ours. That was the industry at the time. So this was the first time where we actually reached further up in the product and said, well, what if the top support was a die-cast aluminum piece that, when you bang your knee into it, you're not going to be cursing the manufacturer because it hurts so bad. Everybody has cables on their desk. What if we put something between the legs that actually managed some of those cables and made it looks like people are scaling walls when you raise your tables up sometimes. So we can clean up that mess, and we'll put the best looking foot in the industry on it. Another die cast piece. And yes, to the layman, it's still a rectangular column that, telescopes and goes up and down, but the different things we were able to add to it at the time was brand new to the furniture industry in North America.
Yeah, very cool. Were there any novel technologies or materials or methodologies that you guys used or discovered throughout that process?
There was. Once again, at the time, we all kind of bought somebody else's legs they developed and put our top on it and called it ours, which meant for the most part, to get the thing to go up and down, it had an up and down arrow buttons. So you push the button to go up, hold it, push the button to go down. And our designer kind of came in one day, I'll never forget it, and said, we're in the middle of launching. We've already set the project budget. We've already set the timeline, right? Anything now would be the dreaded scope creep that engineers hate.
Sure.
The designer comes in and says, I got a pretty neat idea. And you can see all the engineers doing this. And I'm like, what do you got? What is it? He's like, the switch is something no one has touched. And I had an idea. He's like, I'd love a switch that lights up and gives you feedback that it's working, because there's an inherent delay in these tables because they don't use a certain amount of power while they're resting. So they take a minute to warm up before they start moving. Okay. So we're going to light it up to tell you, hey, I'm getting there. I'm like an old man getting out of a chair. Don't worry, I'll make it up. And I'd like it to be a paddle that kind of feels more like you use the phrase, like a tongue. Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to have to tell me more about that. So we ended up developing a illuminated translucent paddle with a softer TPU urethane that when you move the paddle up, table goes up, push the paddle down, table goes down. Nobody in the industry at the time had a simple paddle switch to make electronic tables go up and down.
Interesting.
And to this day, we've tried several different swings at making something better, and there just can't. There isn't.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm kind of getting off the normal questioning track, but did the scope actually creep, and did that affect your timeline and all that?
It didn't actually. I mean, product development is all a combination of time, money, and scope, right? Mm-hmm. So here's your scope. Do you have enough time and money to get it done? And once you set the time and you have the money, something's got to give, right? So we did not have to affect the time, but we contracted in some additional engineering support, probably much like the services that you offer, to say, hey, let's not interrupt the current timeline, but we are, way under budget on spending. So let's use that extra money and see if we can't get this to catch up and then jump on board the train, if you will.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you were able to deliver in the same time frame. It just cost some money to do it.
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we've helped design literally thousands of products, and pretty much every journey is a little bit different. Walk us through the journey of developing your product.
It's funny, having done that and then several other products here, you start to look for common themes, and it starts to become a little old hat when you do. But and it doesn't matter who you are, what you're developing. If you're doing shoes for Nike or circuit boards for Apple or whatever, you go through a concept, develop, and launch phase, and it's always those three. So you have a concept, you have a good idea, you got to, vet out the concept. Is it feasible, right? Something we could do that we could go make money at? Is there a business here, right? Just having a good idea doesn't mean you should do it. Then once you think, it's a good idea, we think we could make some money, it's going to solve a world problem, let's go do it. Then you have to develop it, right? And that's what actually takes most of the time and investment.
Sure.
That's when you throw all your engineers at it, and you're doing the prototyping and the testing and the, it's no longer just sketches, renderings, and whiteboard work. It's like hardcore engineering development work, and that's when you spend your money. But that can go relatively smoothly if you've done enough on the concept phase. If you've gotten your company's leadership to buy in, make a decision, and stick to it. If you've gotten the proper controls in place, the proper documentation for what you need to go do, what market you're going after. Once you get to that development phase, you're spending a lot of money and you're learning, but it tends to be a little more predictable. And then the launch phase is we've developed it, we're making the hard tooling, we're getting ready to do the mass manufacturing methods necessary to make it a reality, and that then becomes very predictable. So product development to me feels a little bit like a snowball. It's like one small good idea at the top of a mountain kind of starts to gain momentum as it works its way down and grow and turn into something that could make a real impact.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So we touched on timeline a minute ago. What was the timeline like for this? Like, how long did it take to develop and launch this?
Yeah, we started it at the end of, the notion was at the end of 2012. We launched it essentially January 3rd, 2014.
Okay.
So the whole true solid development took 13, 14 months.
Yeah, and that was from concept to shelf?
Yes. Yeah. And there are plenty of things we do that take a lot longer. Most of our task seeding is a 3-year timeline minimum. The thing that helps a table like that is, we still did use a table column from a manufacturing partner of ours. So the technology and the structure that makes the thing go up and down was known, right? So we weren't, I think the longer things take is the more risk or invention you're trying to tackle.
Yeah. Do you guys still do that same thing? Do you still buy the existing engineered product, or is it all your own design now?
Yeah, we got a bit of a mix now, right? Okay. We're actually a unique company in the industry from the standpoint that we do one of our different table lines, Sense, we manufacture our own column, right? Okay. And what's been selling so well, we can barely keep up with it enough to make it every column.
Yeah.
So we still have a pretty good mix of working with an outside manufacturing partner and then making our own.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your team. How many people were involved in the development and what were their roles?
On that project team, we had a lead engineer and then 2 supporting engineers. For us, a supporting engineer typically would be on a couple of different projects, so it wouldn't be quite as dedicated as the lead engineer.
Sure.
We have engineering support that we get from our folks in India. So we have folks that are in Bangalore that help lend engineering support and CAD support, which is great because you get work done 24/7 that way, right? Engineer leaves, hopefully that, here we go with the lights. And then you show up the next morning, you've got some things to review, and you get a much better pace that way.
Sure.
Our project team's leadership consists of kind of the three-legged stool of what we call the design and development lead. So a traditional program lead, right? The engineers and the designer kind of report to this person on the project, and they're responsible for the timeline and the development budget and so on and so forth. We have what we call a fulfillment lead, which is operational fulfillment. So they're kind of the helping make sure that we're designing it in such a way that we know where and how we're going to make it. And then once we get halfway through that implementation phase, they kind of take it and run with it and make it, sellable. And then we have a market launch lead, which is helping define the product and the market need up front. And then kind of on the backside, helping work with our marketing teams to properly market message, sales enablement type work. So it had a market launch lead, a fulfillment lead, and a design and development lead, in addition to the lead engineer and two supporting engineers. And then there's always a series of shared services that we have to lean into, like database work and engineering change order administration and routings and all the other stuff out in operations to make it a reality. So and of course we work with outside designers, industrial designers, to get their best thoughts on our product needs.
Sure. Very interesting. What were some of the key milestones or achievements that you guys hit along the way?
An interesting one is, we have a process like a lot of other folks. And, in the concept phase, we go through things like a design intent phase and a concept proposal, where we're proposing the concept to meet the design intent. And then, hey, we've concept selected, we've selected this. Our biggest stage gate is probably our business proposal level. That's just short BP for short. That's where everything kind of comes together to say, this is a good idea. This is what it's going to be. Here's how much money we can make. Me as the project lead, MillerKnoll, you give me $1.5 million to do this project, and here's the return on your investment over the course of the next 3 years. So those tend to be a bit more glorious from a executive involvement standpoint. And I remember on this one, Brian Walker was our CEO at the time. I had an individual meeting with him, which, what was I, probably 42, maybe, in my early 40s. So still kind of a kid-ish. It depends on who's listening to this, what you define by kid. Yeah, right. Yeah. The guys that are helping you with this podcast probably are like, what? 42? Yeah. Ancient. But I felt like that because I was still pretty young in my leadership career. So sitting one-on-one with our CEO was impactful for me.
Sure.
And then to have your CEO look at something you're so proud of and say, that kind of looks like a lot of other things that I've seen. Like, we didn't really innovate on the column, did we?
Mm-hmm. Like, really?
But let me tell you, but when you start to tell the story of the table and what we're doing, it's like it was an industry-leading table at the time. But yes, we did not invent a new way for a table to float on air and go up and down.
Right. So, what kind of prototyping processes were involved during the development?
So we have a pretty extensive model shop here where we can machine pretty much anything: wood, aluminum, steel, small urethane cast plastic parts, 3D printed parts. So we would be prototyping production representative product, but rather than die casting an aluminum piece, we'd machine it. Sure. Right. So we get the final results, but we just get there with a more labor intensive way. Oftentimes what we will do with die cast parts when we get into like testing in particular, because machined aluminum tends to be a bit stronger than die cast, just the nature of the grain structure of the metal. And you could be overconfident by testing a machined part. So we like to try and do low investment die casting, which, you make an aluminum tool to make aluminum parts. And as you can imagine, they don't last quite as long as the steel tools do, but they get you a lot closer to what you're looking for in the end, and a lot more parts cheaper than machining. So
a
lot of 3D printing, a lot of machining, but in the end, too, a fair amount of low investment, low volume tooling methods.
Yeah. So even though it's die cast, I mean, in the injection mold world, you have, bridge tooling that sometimes they'll call it. It's an aluminum mold that, you can get a few parts off of, so you can actually do real testing and all that, and then you go build the expensive tool.
Yeah, was that like a mud base or something where it's like you can kind of interchange all the different things in there, and it just squirts a whole bunch of different parts all at once? And
yeah. So it's the same thing for you. That way you can get actual production level parts at not the big expense of the steel tool.
Correct. And the timing too, right? I mean, I think it's interesting when you work for a bigger company like this, you have a little more money to do that type of prototyping early. So you can put off the risk of investing in a production tool. Smaller companies can't do that as much, so they jump right to the production tool, and then they just take the time on the back end to make the changes necessary to fix anything that's not going right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, believe it or not, we're already coming towards the end of the questions I have, but shifting gears a little bit, what if you could go back in time and change one thing about developing this product, what would it be?
It's hard to because we did so much with it. It is hard to say, but we sometimes give in a bit too much to, this is going to sound bad, what our salespeople are asking for. Sure. In that, right? I mean, it's like if you need to have a statement of line that's 1 million SKUs long so that I can sell anything to anybody at any time, right? And looking back, it's like I probably overburdened the project team a little bit by tackling such an expansive vocabulary of sizes and so on and so forth. And
sure,
probably could have narrowed that quite a bit and then just listened to the market, to what they're buying from our custom team, and added the standard products after the fact.
Yeah. Based on the response about the CEO, I thought maybe you'd say we should have done a custom column or something.
Yeah. I think it was an interesting project for me too, because we had 3 other large initiatives going all at the same time, which were taking more of the, we'll say, corporate focus. So I kind of always found myself in the position of arguing for funding or attention, or I was a little kid in the corner holding his breath, stomping his feet. I think if I'd have gone that far, I wouldn't have gotten the funding and support. Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the trends that you know, in your corner of the product development world, what are some of the trends you see emerging?
It's interesting, back in the Dilbert, anyway, everybody knows Dilbert, right? The sea of panel systems, right? Well, Herman Miller helped create that whole thing with Action Office back in the 60s. 60s, Action Office wasn't intended to be a cubicle, right? It was intended to be just space dividers for different open plan meeting spaces, but people quickly turned it into small offices in a big open plan. That type of thing has evolved into several different versions, which you're probably all familiar with, that particularly with the pandemic and even before, kind of going away, right? And in our industry, in order to make those things at the volume we had to make them and the price that we're able to sell them at, we had a huge amount of investment in tooling. And therefore, when someone comes to ask us, hey, can you customize it and do this? We get to say yes or no, because there's certain capabilities we have to do it, there's certain capabilities we don't. As those panels start to go away and you just need some legs to help a table go up and down, maybe a screen to help divide you from your neighbor a little bit, right? The office got a lot more lightweight. The ability to customize became a lot easier to achieve for smaller companies. And I think the interesting trend in our industry in particular is that our competitors went from 3 or 4 major competitors to dozens.
Oh, really?
Right? We find ourselves competing against small to medium-sized manufacturing companies all the time because their ability to be fast and nimble is customer wants it like this. Yeah, we'll do that. Whatever it takes. Give us the revenue.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
Our ability to respond to those needs has really shifted in the last decade.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, before I started Impulse, I was in a cube farm, and we knew of the Millers and the Knolls and the Steelcase and all that. And it seemed like that was kind of the corner of the market as a whole. And to hear now that there are dozens, it's definitely changed.
There's smaller companies like Watson's, a small storage and table company out in Seattle, and Enwork is a small table company over here just east of Grand Rapids. They do a fair amount of table work, right? And we just find ourselves competing against them. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been doing this for a while. So reflecting on all the challenges and successes that you've encountered developing products, what words of wisdom would you share with those looking to make a significant impact in the product development industry?
Don't be scared to think outside of your world a little bit, right? And I say that because I think that the Renew table was my first opportunity to be looking at something where I went to a furniture show in Cologne, Germany. It's called Orgatech. It's like the big furniture show in Europe. We have an equivalent here called Neocon. And as I went around, I'm like, I'm not really seeing anything from anybody that's near what we're chasing. And it kind of made me realize that we're making a world-class table. And I think best advice I'd give you is, as you get into these ideas, don't limit yourself, right? I mean, I'm not saying every time you do something, make it the best in the world, right? Or, die trying. But when you get to some good ideas and you get to some good work, even when your CEO says, but you're not doing anything about the column, you can still be looking for the best in the world and still achieving it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to mention with regards to the product or product development in general?
I'd say obviously I've spent about 5 or 6 years at Steelcase and going on 24 years here at MillerKnoll, 30 or so years around product one way or the other, right? Either customizing it, making it from scratch, or managing it from a business standpoint. I don't know. I just think I kind of fell into this. This wasn't what I went to school for, but I kind of found a knack for creative problem solving. And I'm able to apply creative problem solving to products. I'd say to anybody that's kind of young in their career, find what your niche is and what everybody says, find your passion. Yeah, find what you're good at.
Yeah.
Right. And when you find what you're good at, your passion will come.
Sure.
So it's I ended up being good at creative problem solving, and I like applying it to product. So I've been able to stick around with that for a while.
Cool. Those are good words. Before we end, where can we find more about is the product still in the market, by the way?
Product's still in the market today. Yep. We have a much larger range of products to go with it now, right? But if you went to MillerKnoll.com and just did a search on Renew, RENEW, this table line would come up and you'd kind of get a sense of what we're talking about.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. So I really appreciate you doing this for me, Larry.
All right. You bet. It was a lot of fun.
To learn more about Impulse and how we might be able to help you, visit impulseproductdevelopment.com.